Hey guys, kinggath here, and this is the first video I'm going to do like this. I have no idea how I'm going to approach these in the future, but essentially, Rick and I talked about this, and we thought some of you might be interested in how I troubleshoot bugs in some settlements. So we're going to try and record them and see how it goes, see if it's interesting or whatnot. So right away when I was recording the start of this playthrough, I ran into a bug. And that was unexpected, and that is one that the Conqueror pop-up didn't start. So I'm going to record how I go about troubleshooting this. So the first thing I did, I know that the city plan pop-up is based on a quest called kinggath City Plan Starter. And basically it launches and it waits for some of the background stuff to happen in the game, and then it will trigger that pop-up. Well, so the first thing I do is I run a function. It's a console command rather. It's called SQV, which is show quest variables, what it's short for. So when you run that with the name of a quest, it gives you kind of what's going on with that particular quest. And quests don't necessarily have to be like actual quests you're doing missions on. We also use them for controllers. So they're just kind of like a thing that runs in the background and handles a bunch of code. And so I've got one called in Conqueror called kinggath City Plan Starter. So if I run this SQV, at the very bottom, I can see the problem immediately. It says state stopped. So the quest isn't running. So the most common thing that causes a quest to fail to start are called aliases. And aliases are ways for your quest to interact with things in the game world. So I have a number of aliases set up on Conqueror or on this particular quest, and my assumption is that one of them is not loading up correctly. It's not being loaded up. So I've loaded up Conqueror in the creation kit, and I've got my city plan starter quest up, and I'm looking at all of the aliases here. And so one of the things you can do to avoid this issue is make them optional. So you can see that there's these flags, and the O means optional. Anything that's optional won't prevent the quest from starting up. But the problem with optional ones is you can't guarantee that they're going to actually be filled. And so I tend to not set things optional that I need to have in order to get things started. So some of these I know will be available. So I look at these like safe spawn point, unique actor, all of this stuff you can see by the name of it, kinggath. These are all things I put in the game. So those are not going to fail. There's one that could fail on start, and that's this closest workshop to start. I have it starting out at Sanctuary, and this is probably my downfall. So one of the things with Sanctuary is it is considered it's a settlement that often gets flagged as reserved. And what reserved means basically is that the game has decided that this alias is too important or this object is too important for other quests to potentially interfere with it. So you can flag things as reserved, and then it basically means no one else can use this until I'm done with it. But there is a way you can get around that. And if I open this up, you can see I tried to do it already. And you can basically put in a thing that says allow reserved, which will allow you to use things that are reserved by other quests. Now you can see here that it's grayed out. Now this is something that I'm learning new right now, and I'm just a theory. So a lot of bug fixing is theory crafting, because not all of this stuff is documented, and some of it that is documented isn't correct. So allow reserved is only available if your quest is not set to start the game enabled. And so we need this quest to start enabled because we need that thing to launch. But one of the ways we could get around that is we could have like a dummy quest that just its whole job is to turn this one on. So that might be what I have to do. That's going to be kind of what I experiment here in this bug hunting. But I wanted to give you guys some of the preambles so you knew what exactly I was going to be trying. So that's going to be the first thing I try. The other thing I could do, the other way I could approach this probably, is instead of starting this with Sanctuary, what I could do is start it with nothing, leave it as optional, and then I could set up I could load it via a script. So I could load Sanctuary with a script and just force it into that alias and then use it that way. And that's another way I might go. In fact, that's probably the easier way. But the problem with both of these methods is they might break things for people who are already playing. And that's the other tricky thing when you're editing a live mod, is that you got to make sure that any changes you make to help new players don't screw everything up for people who are already in the process of playing. And so like messing with aliases, that could cause a big problem. So for example, let's say I empty this alias out and change it to some other method. Well, then anybody who loads up the patch that I do that in who's in the middle, who their city plan process is in the middle of processing, if it tries to grab from this ref and I messed with it, it might not go. So that is definitely leaning me toward the script solution. And so I think that's where I'm going to start. So we're going to bring up some scripting and I'll show you guys how all that works. All right, so we are looking at the city plan starter script, and we are going to set ourselves up for doing this a script solution. So where we populate that alias. I'm still trying to think here because I have again, I'm concerned about breaking things for others. So I wonder if we can just avoid the need for the alias altogether. So let's try it that way. So I'm going to start by, I try to organize my scripts by chunks. So I've got at the top, I've got the constants. So one of the first constants we're going to need to do this, and I'm also going to try and tag everything with the patch number. So at the point where I'm making this video, the 4.01 patch still hasn't come out. Now I don't know if this will make it in there or not, but hopefully. So I like to do things like this. I start them with the form IDs. I just stick them like that, iForm ID, and then what it is. So it's going to be sanctuary workshop ref and equals. So there's a trick with form IDs you can do in a script. So essentially you just label them 0x00 and then use the last 6 digits of the actual ID of the thing. And then you can actually use the hex, whereas you don't. A lot of times, if you guys have worked with my Builder's Toolkit stuff at all, you have to convert it to integers first, and that's kind of a pain in the butt. But in scripts directly, you can type them up like this. I happen to memorize the object reference for Sanctuary because I use it so often for testing. So it's 250FE. Well, 0250FD. So the first 2 are the load order, so you always leave those as zeros in the script, and then the last 6 are the actual forms ID. And then you put const because we're not going to be having that be edited ever. So what we're going to do then is we need to go to our startup area. So in order for this to work, essentially, we are going to have to remove the sanctuary pointer on that. So there's a potential this could cause a problem. So likely what I'm going to have to do is load this patch up like in this test with a game that has just started, like one that has just gotten past that sequence and hasn't failed. So maybe I'll disable all of my other mods and pop in, and I'm not going to record all that for you guys. I'm just going to test and see if we can get a new game to start up correctly with my current mod order. But ultimately that's how I would figure that out. That's how I would make sure the stuff would work with other games, is get a game that's in a sequence that I think it might interfere and make sure it doesn't. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to onQuest init is where we're going to put this because this is only for brand new games where this is a potential issue. Okay, we're also going to need, and I think we're going to need a place to store this. So the actual variable. So the const or the integer that we're storing, that's just the form ID. We're going to load it up with a certain function. Okay, so we've got this thing here, closest workshop to start. So we're going to need, and so we're also going to need a dynamic property. Actually, no, we don't need it to be dynamic. Dynamic properties to me are things that we anticipate changing throughout the game based on, especially through things externally or where they might need to access them. So it's generally things. In fact, none of these even belong in here. They're all just conditionals that should be actually labeled conditionals. But for me, dynamic properties is stuff that I anticipate other quests or functions might actually need to access. In this case, I don't think anything else is going to have to access it, so I'll just make it a variable. So we will stick it here with all this stuff because it's similar. So I do want it to be a workshop script, and the difference between that and say like I could make it an object reference because that's what I'm going to get. And if I'm talking over your guys' heads about this stuff, I mean, this is generally just like, this is designed, I guess, for people who know a little bit about this, but maybe you'll pick some stuff up as you're going. But I'm not anticipating everybody's going to be following me along, and I'm not going to be going into all of the details to try and explain this stuff. It might be one of those things where it makes more sense to you if you watch it again later. Or it might be that this whole idea of showing this is a bust and nobody cares, or or I'm talking too high level for it. I'm hoping that you guys are interested enough to follow along anyway, but we'll see. So I like to name my variables with the prefixes when appropriate. I don't always do it with arrays, which is what this little bracket means. I don't always name them with a prefix, but in this case, when it's a single object, I start references with a K. That was something actually Bethesda started doing and I liked. But then like I as an integer, F as a float, B as a Boolean, stuff like that. So I prefix them all. That way I know what it is without having to go look up the definition of it. So I don't have to come back up to the top of my file to figure out what the hell it is that I'm referencing. So in this case, I'm using K because it's a reference, and I'm naming it very close to the same as the alias, which we're gonna basically be discontinuing the need for. So what we're gonna do is in onquest init, we're gonna use this function called get form from file, which lets you basically load things into a script right into variables directly. So we're gonna take our K closest workshop blah 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 equals game.get form from file, and then we'll use our form ID. So form ID sanctuary workshop ref, and that's going to come from Fallout 4.esm because that's in the base game. And you always have to anything you get form from file from, you have to cast it as what it is. So in this case, I want it as workshop script. So with scripts, what's interesting about them, so generally there's only so many base types, but then workshop script kind of expand that. So the actual type of anything that's an in-game existing reference is object reference, but you can cast directly to a type that's extended from that. So workshop script is on each of the workshops. So it's like on the Sanctuary workbench, it's on the Red Rocket workbench, etc. And it's a script on it called workshop script. And if you look at the definition of workshop script, it says it extends object reference, which means that even though we know this is just like you can only do this with object references, you're essentially casting it directly into a workshop script because a workshop script is now a subtype of object reference or an extended type of it. So if you know anything about programming, that will make sense. If you don't, who cares? Not important that you know it anyway. I'm just trying to be thorough enough to where somebody who knows a little could pick up. Okay, so that's all we would need there. So I'm going to try and tag all new lines with the patch number that we're adding them in. So let me go back up and do that up here. This is something I found that they do in the unofficial patches I really like, and it was something I never did before, and it's dumb. I should be doing it even in my personal non-modding software projects for work and stuff, and I never had, but it makes so much sense. It's much easier to figure out where you screwed up later, because that's one of the things that a lot of programming is, and why you guys will see in some settlements and any mod really that or any software really, a lot of times people will they'll release patches to fix things, and they'll introduce old bugs or introduce a bunch of new bugs. It's just a lot of times people forget where they've made changes, and you get multiple people playing with stuff, and it's real easy to screw that stuff up. So, but by tagging them with the line, at least you can see the last changes you made, so it's easier to roll back and fix things you screwed up later. All right, so we've got our K closest workshop to ref. So now we're essentially going to replace all of the calls to the alias in here. So I'm just going to search for that. Notepad++ is amazing. If you're a programmer and you're not using Notepad++, I don't know what you're doing with yourself. That's my personal opinion. I hate most IDEs, so I just use Notepad++ as much as possible. But I get it. Once you get used to a good IDE, it's fine. But I absolutely love Notepad++. I'm a junkie. All right, so essentially, all we were doing here, we were only using it in one spot, which was to fill this object ref. So we can just basically, instead of that, we can just call this. In fact, we don't even need to store it as a global since we're using it. So we can make it a local. So let's do that. Let's keep this code nice and clean. We'll get rid of this, because one of the problems with setting up a global like that is it's going to be always stuck in memory. It's just never going to go away. And so if we can avoid that, that's better. So we'll bring this down. So we'll get rid of this. We don't need this global assigned thing. We can do it in this local variable. Okay. So we'll just basically say, and we didn't even need to change the name of that. Oops. Hey, where'd we go? Let's get back to there. Okay, so we can even use, why are we changing the name of variables? It was fine how it was. Starting point ref, and we'll just comment that out. Actually, let's do this. Let's comment out the old line, and we'll just change it. So we'll say object reference. That way I can remember what it used to be. And that way if I screw something royally, I can just undo that. So there we go. So now we've got 4.01 there. And then another thing that's useful here is to be like, put in a note about why I did this. So 4.01, switching to get form from file to dodge alias issue with reserves. With sanctuary being reserved. This is probably, I would argue, this is one of the hardest things to force yourself to do in programming, and one of the most important things to like going next level in programming is typing up notes. And it's so stupid and simple. And like if you read any programming books when you're starting, they will tell you that. And almost everybody I know is so lazy about it. And then as they go, they program, they do less and less notes, and you should actually be doing the opposite. You should be doing more and more as you go. And it took me years to do it. Like some of my first, even professional projects, if I go back and read the code, I can't do anything with it because I have no idea what I was thinking or like what my logic was, and I'll be jumping all over the place and there's not enough notes. And sometimes there's reasons to do tricky stuff. And when you're going to do that, you need to put notes in. So I tend to try and go crazy with notes. If you've looked at my workshop framework code, I hope I've been good about that. And if you find that I'm lacking, if I'm not up to your standards, let me know. Because I'm trying to make workshop friendly as openly friendly to other programmers as possible, so we can work together and make cool stuff with Fallout. Okay, so essentially this should theoretically solve that problem of getting access to this start point. That's all we needed. There was really no reason for it to be an alias. Okay, so then we pop back in here. We need to compile that script. So let's go Papyrus Script Manager. Papyrus Script Manager, if you haven't used it, I love this thing. It's really awesome for organizing your scripts if you're doing it. But it essentially just gives you a spot to search for and compile and rename scripts all in one screen, as opposed to like having to find the thing that it's on. You can also use use info and figure out what things are using your script. It's such a sweet tool. All right, so we're doing city plan starter. And we're going to compile this, and hopefully I have all the files installed in here. So one of the things I have set up, I've mentioned many times in various videos that I have multiple computers, and I use them for developing the live content of Sim Settlements, and then I use the other one for new stuff that we're working on that's still a long ways off. And that one with all the new stuff is also the one I use to record my videos on. And so it's always questionable whether I have the latest files on my test machine or if I have like experimental files. So hopefully I set this up correctly and I have all the correct ones. So you can see I have like multiple installations of the creation kit so that I can try and keep my old work and new work separate, but it doesn't always work out that well. All right, so we've got our script compiled. So now what we need to do is, we're going to risk screwing up some other games. And like I said, we'll do some tests and make sure. So one of the things is the only way we can really uncheck that reserved box now. And this is something I'm not even sure, because not everyone has this issue. I've played through the startup a million times and had it pop up, even though this is all set up like this. So it might be one of the other mods I have installed. It might just be a fluke. I don't know what it is. Usually that trick works of like allowing reserved anyway, or I'm just fooling myself. I'm not sure. But in order to get that box to uncheck so that you can mess with it, you have to just uncheck start game enabled. And then we go back to request aliases. I'll load up closest workshop to start. Now I'm not going to delete it, because you definitely like removing things from a mod that's live and people saves is a great way to screw up their saves. So we're going to just uncheck that. We're going to leave this in here, but we're going to just make it optional. So this is my potential solution. Like we're not actually using it, but like I said, I don't want to screw up other people's saves. So I'm just going to leave it all. All I'm doing is removing that reserve flag, changing it, or the allow reserve, changing it to optional, and then I've got to check back in the start game enabled. So theoretically, now we crash out Fallout 4 because I have the save already. All right, and you guys can see I was doing some mod hunting to see if there was anything useful there. Oh, that was from when I was recording the audio for that video, and I wanted to figure out who it was who was making all those cool CC mods. Okay, so now we've got our plugin saved. We've got our potential new solution. We've got our script compiled. So now we're going to launch. I'm running everything through Vortex, which is the first time I've ever done a playthrough with Vortex, because I want to learn it. I want to make sure that I understand how this works for people. Okay, we are loaded up in Fallout 4. We are going to start a new game, and let's see. And I'll just like accept the default character and skip past all this so you guys don't have to waste any more time on this. And we will see if our quest stuff pops up, because my load order is exactly the same. So theoretically, if that was the problem, if it was that sanctuary ref, this should just fix it immediately. There's also the chance that it was just a fluke and this doesn't fix. So this is going to be one of those things where if I want to really confirm it's working, I'm going to run this test like a dozen times. But we're going to just do it once and assume, because if it fails once, it's definitely not working. But if it succeeds, I can't guarantee that was an actual success. It might have just been a fluke. So I will count a failure as a failure, but I will not count a success as a success, if you know what I mean. So even if this works right now, I'm still going to be doing a ton more testing, but we'll claim victory for the sake of this video if it works. So let's find out. Hey, there we go. It came right up. So let's go ahead and, we've got to get out of these menus to get that. So, okay, good. I can bring it. Wait, no, I can't bring up the console because my mouse is out of the game. This is one of the goofy things. I use a controller a lot because it allows me to, it has a couple of advantages. First off, it's just, it makes me feel more relaxed when I'm playing games with a controller. But it also has the added advantage of you can like free your mouse up real easily to go to your other screens and do stuff, which is really helpful when I'm troubleshooting. Okay, so we're going to do show. I know it's going to be running, but just to prove the point, we're going to go show quest variables again. Oh, I forgot the prefix kg conc city plan starter. And we can see, yes, it's enabled. Yes, it's running. And if we scroll up at the bottom, there are all the reference aliases. It's got all the settlements, and up if we get up to, let's see, closest workshop to start. Ironically, closest workshop to start did fill. So that's one of those things where I'm just like, I'm skeptical that this was actually the solution, and it might have just been maybe I spent too much time, because somebody posted this as a bug report that if they spent too much time in the character creator, that it could actually prevent the menu from starting. Maybe they're right. Maybe because I had responded to them that, hey, that's not the case because I played around the character creator overnight and left it running, but maybe it's like the action, you're actually actively working on it. So my experiment with them when they reported that bug was to I went to a new character, turned off my monitor and left it there overnight. And I was like, okay, the next morning I finished the character and the menu popped right up. But again, these could all be flukes. So I've got a lot more experimenting to do, but theoretically the fix I just did makes a lot of sense. And the way I did it with the script is just easier since it was a one-time use. I think when I originally set it up, I probably anticipated I was going to have to do more advanced things with the alias. And since I didn't, the game.get form from file is totally fine. And it's a great shortcut and way to avoid some of these silly issues. So, all right, guys, let me know in the comments if this is something you enjoyed. If you guys want to see me continue to do this as I go through my playlist or my playthrough, anytime I run into a bug, should I make a save with the plan of doing a video to show you guys of how I troubleshoot the mod, or do you just not care? Either way, I'm happy to do it or happy to not, but if we get enough people who are interested, then I will make that part of my plan, because I'm going to have to troubleshoot it anyway, and talking through problems is often a good way to solve them, so kind of a win-win as far as I'm concerned. But if nobody's interested, I won't waste the bandwidth with all of these massive files, because these end up being multi-gig videos. All right, I digress. Take care, guys, and we'll see you next time, hopefully a long time away, because I don't want to keep running into bugs, but I know better. All right, take care, guys. Enjoy the mods.